Welcome to another episode on our psychology of the Fountainhead characters, gratefully put on by Razzie from the Ayn Rand Centre UK, and we are delighted to be joined by Doctors Milgram and Bernstein. And today we are going to be discussing, I think, one of the most tragic characters of the novel, someone who I guess we'll find out when we talk. Like, is she a major character? She's not really a minor character. She's, a victim. She's many things. And I look forward to the discussions on this. But, when I think about Katie, in another episode, when we discuss Peter Keating, we talk about how he sometimes evokes pity. I think Katie evokes a lot more emotion, and I'm looking forward to hearing both of your takes on that. So would either of you like to start on discussing Katie today?
I just want to say Doctors Milgram and Bernstein sounds like a medical clinic in Brooklyn. But,
nice. Yeah.
But they say ladies first. Josh, you want to get started with poor Catherine Halsey?
Okay. We were talking about Toohey and saying, is there a moment when he seems to be not entirely consistent with himself, when he's wondering about destroying the promise, the contract that Keating and Rourke made up? And I think that that's complicated, but there is a moment with Katie that I remember confused me a bit the first time I read the book. And this has to do with when he first met Katie, that he had not planned to take her into his house. Okay. And, but when she stepped off the train in New York, her plain little face looked beautiful for a moment, as if the future were opening before her and its glow were already on her forehead, as if she were eager and proud and ready to meet it. I mean, it's great writing, right? It was one of those rare moments when the humblest person knows suddenly what it means to feel at the center of the universe, and is made beautiful by the knowledge, and the world in the eyes of witnesses looks like a better place for having such a center. Ellsworth Toohey saw this and decided that Catherine would remain with him. Well, when I read that, I thought, oh, what a nice moment, that he looks at her and he sees how beautiful the world can be and he wants her. Well, as I proceeded, again, it's vivid in my mind because I thought, okay, I guess he can appreciate that. And then I realized what was going on, which is that he looks at Catherine and he thinks she's worth my attention to destroy. Okay. Now, he does admittedly often go after easy targets, students and so on, but he doesn't he does collect swords, he does collect souls and so on, but it's not as if he goes after absolutely everybody. But Catherine, on the one hand, he sees her vulnerability and he sees the happiness and the beauty in her face, and he says, okay, this is a job for Ellsworth Toohey, and he goes to work. So I thought that was a really interesting device of characterization, because I would guess I'm not the only person who got fooled, because the writing is so beautiful about how wonderful the expression on Katie's face is. And that means something different to most readers of the book than it does to Ellsworth Toohey. And I think when you look at it, you realize it characterizes her and it characterizes him. Because if you really understand that, I think most readers of the book would think, oh, isn't that wonderful? And then when they find out that Ellsworth Toohey is out to destroy her, it's a wedge. It means, it's one more thing that helps that Ellsworth Toohey is a bad guy if he looks at Katie and thinks, I want to end that look on her face. So I think that's brilliant. Yeah.
It's monstrous. And to start in with Catherine Halsey, I want to go back to a great scene with Toohey and Keating. In fact, it's the first time they meet, and Keating's kissing up to Toohey, and Toohey tests him. He asks him out of the blue, what do you think of the Temple of Nike Apteros? I think it was this overlooked gem that's been overshadowed by others. That isn't that always the case? The bigger and the stronger, pushing aside, blah blah blah. The weaker, and he's watching too. He's watching Keating, and Keating goes, Temple of Nike Apteros, and Toohey knows immediately he never heard of it. And Keating says, yeah, that was always my favorite too. And Toohey says something like, really? Really, I was certain you'd say it, you know. And anyway, he's probing Keating's soul, and he says to him, "I hear you're engaged to my niece," and Keating says yes, and Toohey says, "You love her," and Keating says, "Very much." And Toohey knows, I think Ayn Rand says, but the absence of stress in Keating's voice made it solemn, and Toohey knows this is the last firsthand real value in Keating's soul. This is, he doesn't love architecture. The only thing or person left in his life that he loves is Catherine Halsey. And that's all that's left in Keating's soul. And that's the one value, the one personal value in Catherine Halsey's soul, is she loves Peter Keating. And so he begins a deliberate attempt then to minimize their relationship, to push Keating away from Catherine Halsey to Dominique Franken. It's a two-pronged attack, because if he can get Keating to dump Catherine, he empties Keating's soul of its last personal value, and it empties Catherine Halsey's soul of her only personal value. And they're both then spiritually bereft, and he can then take over their souls, fill it with what he wants. It's just masterful villainy here. It's just brilliant. And Catherine Halsey is collateral damage here. He wants, at this point, he wants Keating. And, he'll just, let's put it this way: Toohey's an equal opportunity destroyer. He'll destroy anybody, and Catherine Halsey's, her capacity, her innocence, her capacity for love, her capacity for joy, which Toohey's incapable of feeling, he's gonna set out to destroy it, and he does.
Well, I think that's all true, but there's something else going on with Katie and with Toohey, because I think that it is true that she loves Peter, but she's young, and the mere disappearance of Peter, let's say Peter dies, that wouldn't ruin Katie's life. Okay. Just saying, because Toohey has also destroyed, he didn't want her to go, she was going to go to college. She's not going to college. He puts her to work, doing his scrapbook and helping out and so on, the thing, he's the most important person. He takes away her joy in social work, in which, there is work she could do with helping people, advise them to improve their lives and so on. I mean, it's not a field that depends entirely on people having sores. And when she confesses that she's starting to feel mean about that and unhappy when people succeed, he tells her, you're thinking about yourself too much. You're thinking about, poor little Katie Halsey, you need to forget yourself. So he's kind of going to work on her separately, not just in relation to Peter Keating, because here's the thing: Peter Keating, he doesn't have a lot of stick-to-itivity, but he stands up to, I mean, he knows, yeah, hands do sweat when they're together, but that's not the end of it. He himself has not been able to follow through with Katie, in that he's ignored her for months at a time, but when he's coming to New York, he lets her know, and he always does feel, he doesn't diminish her. Peter doesn't criticize Katie. They feel clean together. And when his mother goes to work on him, and what'll happen, what'll Frank do if he finds out that you've preferred this gutter snipe to his daughter, he'll pick Bennett. No, not Bennett. And then, which is kind of like the second act, because it was no, not Schlenker. And yet he still isn't walking out on Katie. So Peter really, I mean, part of what that sets up for us is that Peter, who can't stick to things, he can stick to Katie until what Dominique does. And Dominique isn't even thinking about Katie. So I think that there's a real horrible thing that happens there, in that Keating can't stand up to Dominique, but it isn't actually that Toohey is the one who set that thing in motion. So, except of course that Dominique is doing this because of the Stoddard Temple, and right. Toohey did set that in motion. So, it's as if Toohey's got many different ways of destroying things, and this one works in a way that he might not have anticipated. But if you talk about collateral damage, I don't think that Dominique is thinking, oh, gee, poor Katie. She doesn't even think about Katie.
Right.
And part of the way that the book is set up is that Peter and Katie are not a secret relationship, but not an open relationship. Okay, because the open relationship is that Peter and Dominique are a couple, except that they aren't, because Dominique is actually in a relationship with Rourke and Peter's actually in a relationship with Katie. Just saying, so it's sort of as if we've got several different couples there, and Dominique thinking, okay, I'm going to punish myself. She's not even thinking about Katie, but
right.
And
The relationship with Catherine and Toohey is fascinating. Like you said,
yes,
because when the one time when she's walking past Toohey's study and his shadow on the wall
yes,
just seems baleful, and it just at she doesn't understand this intellectually, but at some emotional level she realizes this guy is evil. He's like he's like the giant spider, and he's just pulling all kinds of human flies into his web to be destroyed. And she runs to Peter, right? She's terrified, and properly so, legitimately so. She just doesn't understand it intellectually. And then when they decide that they're going to get married, and this is Catherine's lifeline. I mean, this is real values, this is real passion, this is real happiness. She says to him, "I'm not afraid of you anymore, Uncle Ellsworth," and he understands what she's saying. She doesn't understand it intellectually, but what she's saying to him is, "I have values of my own, and I'm not gonna give up my soul to you." And you see Catherine, who still has a real chance at living, and living well, and with the way she turns out in the end when Keating meets her on the street. It's heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking. No. Yeah. When you mention that about Ellsworth Toohey is the shadow, that reminded me of the Beast. Okay, Stephen Mallory describes the
Beast, right?
Right, the Beast. It's this being that's got purposes of its own, and you can't talk to it. You can't talk to it in human language. You can't get through to it. And why did he shoot Ellsworth Toohey? Because he knows everything about the Beast. Well, Mallory doesn't explain that, but I think we understand that's now the Beast is the mob that's got a purpose of its own. It's people who aren't people, who are second-handers. And Ellsworth Toohey knows everything about that, about being without values, without thoughts of your own. And that's the worst thing that could happen to a person, is not to be a person anymore. And yet the novel has been about that all the way through. All the way through, people feel that they aren't themselves anymore, bad people, weak people, when they're around Rourke. It's as if he doesn't see them. Mrs. Keating feels that, doesn't see him. People see him as the enemy. The dean says, it's as if you don't care what I think. That's true. I don't care what you think. So the notion of people being invisible and without values, and that's what Ellsworth Toohey wants. And with Katie, she's the one he succeeds with. And to some extent, he succeeds with Keating as well. But with Katie, there's no hope. And she started out with that look on her face. Now, Keating, I don't know if he ever had a look like that on his face. Maybe, back when he was 12 or something. And since then,
when he was young,
Yeah.
and he was thinking about being a painter and everything. It's certainly possible. He had values. He had the capacity to love. He loved painting, and then he loved Catherine. He did have that capacity. So it's very possible that he did. And we discussed Keating. There's my take on Keating at the end is his life isn't as empty as Catherine's is, because
yes,
back to his childhood love, painting. All right. He's killed off that spark of creativity. His paintings are crude. Rourke doesn't even want Rourke, a paragon of honesty, doesn't even want to have to tell him the truth. But he has to when he tells him it's too late. But my vision of Keating, though, is he's sitting in his cabin in the woods, doing what he loves, and there's a quiet sense of peace, to his life, and there's something here that gives him,
and he can speak the truth. He can speak the truth. He can speak the truth. Right. I've been a parasite, and he can speak the truth to Katie, and she can't hear it.
That's
right. That's the difference between them.
Yeah, that's a good point. Keating faces up to what he's done, and he's honest about it. And poor Catherine, she's just so far gone. She's she's just love is just, you know, an old bourgeois notion. You know, she's dead. She's just spiritually dead, and it's heartbreaking when you juxtapose it with that beauty, you know, that beautiful look on her face when she was young and first came to New York. What Toohey's done to her, you know, is a moral crime, you know, of the most egregious kind.
Now, I think it's important to acknowledge that this is Toohey's niece as well. You know,
Yes.
that he's willing to, you know, the Ayn Rand is showing that Toohey's willing to destroy his own family, which, you know, is a good, wholesome American reading that is going to be shocked by that, you know. And also, something that was, you know, striking me when you were talking about it just then is that Katie has has one value really, doesn't she? Peter. And that's kind of it.
Well, you know what Shoshana said before is, yeah, that's the major value. But
yeah,
what Shoshana said before is important. She was going to college, and so, you know, you think about, well, what could Catherine Halsey's life, you know, what might it have been? You know, I could have been a contender kind of thing from that great, you know, movie on the waterfront. You know, that she could have married Peter if he didn't betray her, and Keating could have said to, you know, Katie, you want to go to college? You don't have to listen to your Uncle Ellsworth. You know, go to college, study whatever it is you want, social work if you want, or whatever it is. And Catherine's life could have been very different. She and Peter were right for each other. You know, they could have had, you know, you know, they'd be every man and every woman. They're not geniuses like Rourke, but you don't have to be happy. Every man and every woman, they could have a more honest life. You know, and she could have had a career. And by the way, something about Keating is important here, because remember, Keating's a manipulator. He's climbing the ladder by, you know, getting dirt on various people in front of him, and, you know, and trying to manipulate them so he can climb the ladder at Franken's. He wants to meet Ellsworth Toohey. He recognizes Ellsworth Toohey as the coming, you know, big name in architecture. He wants Toohey's patronage. He tells Catherine, and she says, well, nothing could be easier, Pete. I'll introduce you to Uncle Ellsworth myself. And Keating says, no, Katie, no. He said, I want to meet her through you. He said, I use people, you know, and I don't want to use you. And it's fascinating here because, you know, at one point, Gail Wynan says, love is the exception making. And Keating never hears that, but it's true. Ayn Rand's showing it's true. He makes the exception for her. He does not want to manipulate her. He does not want to use her. And it shows that his love of her is pure. It's good. It's honest. It's true. And as well it might be. She's got an innocent soul. She's an honest person. She's not beautiful like Dominique Franken, but you don't have to be beautiful. She's very attractive, you know, and you see why Keating loves her, and how heartbreaking it is for both of them that he betrays her and, you know, empties his soul, like I said, his soul of its last real deep personal value, and hers, but by that time was her only one.
Yeah, and it's so miserable too, because they've been talking about marriage, and then they weren't talking about marriage, and now they've made a plan, and all of that he throws away when Dominique knocks on his door, and she even warns him to say no, and he can't do it. I mean, it's almost an example of how not to make a decision.
You're right.
Yeah, I think and not to make wrong values, wrong timing.
I think I mentioned when we were discussing Keating, you know, that whenever I reread the Fountainhead and they'll get to that scene, I find myself yelling at Keating, send her away, marry Catherine. You know, Rourke will be happy with Dominique, not you. You know, you'll be happy with Catherine, and, you know, and the dumb fool never listens to me. He always makes the same wrong, spiritually suicidal choice. You know.
Well, you see, I think that Catherine, she sees something in him that we don't see very often. You know, she,
right.
There's a goodness in him, and she sees it. She even says, don't be selfish, by which she means something different from what we would mean by selfish, but it's as if she wants him to live up to his best self. And she's not a nag. She's not pushing him. She's not pressuring him, but it's as if, you know, she's got an image in her soul of what his soul could be like. And that's what she loves. and that's what she's waiting for until he sees it too and lives up to that. So there's a kind of idealism there. Even the way that in the Fountainhead, Rourke waits for Dominique to figure things out. Well, there's a sense in which Katie's waiting too. You know, she thinks that they belong together and that it's not just one-sided, and that he sees it, but he needs to see it all the way and to act on it. And it's as if, she didn't, well, when it's actually about to happen, it's both expected and unexpected. So I think she sees something in him that the novel doesn't stress as far as making clear to us, because we don't have to marry Peter Keating, but she wants to. And as you say, we can imagine that they would be happy together. And
yeah, I think I think Ayn Rand shows they certainly would be. And just like Peter Keating's a cautionary tale. This could happen to any of us if we choose to sell out the career that we love, the woman or man that we love. And I think Catherine Halsey is a cautionary tale in a way too, because she is sweet and innocent. She's a doll. You can't, if you're a good person, you got to like Catherine Halsey. She's a sweetheart, of a person, but she may not be the brightest bulb on the tree. She's just, ordinary in her intelligence, and her emotional life is pure. She's an honest person. She's innocent. I think is the right word. She's not guilty. She's innocent and not aware of the nature of evil. She senses it when she sees the shadow on the wall, but she doesn't understand it. And I think Ayn Rand is showing us, that having a good soul, and being innocent in this way is a good start, but it's not enough. It can't protect you from evil, and the innocent person of modest intelligence, they're susceptible to being victimized by monsters at both levels. Toohey at the personal level as a cult leader, collecting followers, and at the political level, being seduced by Marxists. She's easily seduced by a socialist or communist like Toohey. She just doesn't have the intellectual wherewithal to protect herself from these bad guys, both at the personal level and at the social level. So I think she's a cautionary tale here too. We need philosophy. I think Ayn Rand's showing us here. Philosophy's hard. And every man and every woman, it's hard for somebody of modest intelligence. But later on, Ayn Rand discussed, philosophy for Ragnar, the professional philosopher, as distinct from philosophy for Reardon, the business person. She needs philosophy for Reardon. She needs philosophy for Catherine Halsey. She needs philosophy at some level to show her that it's good to have a mind of your own. It's good to have your own values. It's good to seek happiness. You should be, you don't even need the highfalutin words like egoism and altruism. It's good to pursue your own happiness. It's good to do it honestly. It's good to have a romantic relationship with someone you love and who loves you. And you should never give these things up. You should stand by what you love and what gives you happiness. She needs philosophy at that level to protect her from the monster in her life, her uncle, and the Marxist intellectual. And she doesn't have it. She doesn't.
That's why she's ruined. She's ruined for good.
Yeah.
And she can't recover. I think that this is not a big deal, but it's a little moment that Keating shows up to see her and she's not there, and she's gone to help out Toohey at the meeting. And then she says, "Oh, I left you a note inside." Okay. Right. Left you a note inside. Now, again, it's just carelessness you could see how, well, she knew she had to write a note, but she didn't think that he can't get inside to see it. But I think that's sort of typical of what can happen. She remembered that she was supposed to tell him something, but she didn't follow through with what it would take to actually inform him. And in a day before cell phones, she couldn't give him a call and notify him as to what was happening. But she wanted to tell him. And, and he sees her there, and it's as if she's being, for Keating, it's as if she's being taken over by the Toohey machine. And that's true. She is being absorbed, and Toohey is the enemy, although ultimately it ends up being Dominique who's the catalyst for her breakup with Peter Keating, but it's because of Toohey that she and Keating can't get back together at the end, because that scene that you can hardly can't read without crying, when she wants to order a salad and supervise his diet, and not, what Ayn Rand thought about salads. That's grass. She didn't like, she didn't think that counted as good food. And here they, and yet that's what Katie wants to eat. She doesn't want nutrition, things that actually sustain you of any kind. Not, by the way, this is not my saying there's anything wrong with salad. I like salad, but here it stands for not the kind of food that Keating wants to eat, and what she thinks is good for him. And it's almost as if she's doing everything by rote, or what she thinks is good for, what the rules are, without thinking of what she wants. And Keating is there to tell her that what you want really counts, because he's learned it, and it was a hard lesson. And he learned it by not getting what he wants. And he's not getting it now either. He wants her to know. But as you see, he even let that happen by accident. He hasn't written her a letter. He hasn't sought her out. It's by accident that their paths meet. And yet what he has to say has been boiling up in him, and he does finally say it. And she does say, she remembers something, but she gets past that, just as for Keating too. He catches on to things and picks himself up and hurries on as if nothing had happened. That the day when he talked with Dominique, and that's not true what you said about me, that I don't have a soul. What is a soul? And he actually understands, and for a minute, and they have a moment of closeness. And then the phone rings, and it's hello, Ellsworth, and goodbye, Insight. It's back to normal. Well, Katie's got her own hello, Ellsworth, and she doesn't pay attention. She can't listen to her own soul. She can't ask for what she wants. She doesn't have any idea of what she might want. She's part of the government now, and they shoot her here, and not shooting with guns, but next time they shoot me up here, maybe we'll get together. It was ever so nice. Yeah.
It's really heartbreaking when Keating says to her, it's the hardest thing in the world to do what you really want to do. And what a deep, lesson, there is there in value achievement and egoism, that Keating's learned it the brutal way by giving up the things, that he really wanted, by letting Mom talk me out of painting for architecture, and letting Ellsworth Toohey, and was assisted by Mom, talk me out of Catherine Halsey for the boss's daughter, and the woman, the beautiful, elegant Dominique Franken, who will impress all the yokels. He's emptied his soul, for a few moments of ooh, from the crowd, and he knows better than anybody how hard it is to do what you really want, to stand up to the moms of that kind and the Tooheys, and it's just heartbreaking. What a cautionary tale for the rest of us.
Well, it's because of Toohey. It's
because you love, if you have to
right.
fight the whole world, don't give it up. Don't let it go. Right? Don't let it go.
Right. It's why you see, he's lost Katie now because of the way that Toohey got into her soul. Okay. His mom would be happy to have him marry Katie now. Dominique is already, off to the next adventure. Toohey's not doing a campaign anymore. But the reason it is too late is because of what happened to Katie. And with everything that he manages to say here, he doesn't have it in his power to change Katie back to that 17-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, she's definitely the character who's, when we discussed Peter Keating, we were wondering where he might be and could he be happy in his later life and stuff. Whereas, Katie comes across as like a robot. She's a Washington bureaucrat who exists to give orders, but they're something like petty little orders about disinfectants or something like that. She really has there's nothing really there. So you can I imagine seeing her then as just this blank screen with those very dissociated. She comes across as your textbook trauma victim, with the dissociated eyes, the kind of slowed speech, the complete lack of passion for anything. She's completely broken. And
her soul is utterly emptied.
Yeah.
Well, it's what Keating says. You're not talking about some other girl, some person you're helping. This is you, and yet it's the you that's lost. Right. It's her own experience that is lost to her. She doesn't experience her own life as if it's a life, as if it's her life.
Not
get up to experience.
It really shows us another side. Talk about psychology, Josh and Shoshana and everybody. When all of your values have been lost in one way or another, you've given them up, you've surrendered them, or you've had them torn from you. There's no capacity for an emotional life anymore. Emotions are a response to values in a given set of circumstances. And poor Catherine Halsey's soul has been torn. All the values, the one major value has been torn from it, and as well as the desire to go to college has all been torn away from her, and she's emotionless. She's robotic. It's like she's completely benumbed and anesthetized, and it's just heartbreaking to watch. I could barely get through that scene. The two heartbreaking Keating scenes, with one with Rourke and one with Catherine. I find the one with Rourke vastly more palatable, because at least Keating's doing what he loves now. He's doing painting, even if it's too late for him to really be a really accomplished painter. But with Catherine, it's all just, oh my God, it's the Holocaust. It's the apocalypse in her soul. She's just dead. She's dead. It's absolutely, she's dead inside. And it's just, she's the Walking Dead.
What's interesting, as far as you're clearly right, she's dead. And Peter Keating, even though he understands more than he did, he's not the one to bring her back to life, because he's just baby steps. He's just learning how to do it himself. And, I was saying 17, it's not 17 exactly, but the boy on the bicycle, he's a few years older than Catherine was. And he was at a point of despair. He wanted something. Now, he did want something, but he doesn't see it anywhere in the world until he does. And I think if we look at the book and we think of Toohey and Rourke as being the opposites, well, Katie met Toohey, and the boy on the bicycle meets Rourke.
Yeah, that
makes all the difference.
Yeah, that's a good analogy, Shoshana. Completely divergent. I like to think of him as the boy who always wanted to write music, although that's a much longer formulation. But right, Rourke gives him the inspiration, the courage to face a lifetime and pursue his values. And now you can see this kid's going to go off and write music. Whereas Rourke gives him that courage. On the other hand, Toohey tears away. Rourke gives him the courage to pursue his values. Toohey tears away Catherine's values. And there's the life-giving impact of a true egoist versus the death-dealing impact of a true altruist. You pursue your values, give up your values. There's really, that's really what the Fountainhead's really about, isn't it? Judgment, values. Live by your own judgment, form and pursue your own values. There's the thematic content of the Fountainhead in one formulation.
And in my fan fiction, if you think of Atlas Shrugged as going along with the Fountainhead, the boy who wanted to write music, we know what happened to him in Atlas Shrugged.
It comes Richard Halley. Yeah, right.
Right. Yeah. And unfortunately, we know what happened to Katie, because in Atlas Shrugged, there's that social worker who tells Cheryl, if you could only stop living for yourself.
Good points, Shoshana. That's right. That's social worker.
Yeah, it's Katie.
Yeah,
still on the job. Yeah.
That's Katie. That's right. Leading, helping push Cheryl Brooks off the parapet into the river. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I've always seen those two characters as so linked, and I hadn't thought of it exactly like you just said, Shoshana. It makes it's a great analogy there.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah.
The social worker in Atlas doesn't have a name, and the boy on the bicycle doesn't have a name. So.
Yeah.
You can give them names.
Yeah. She is a heartbreaking character and a very necessary character. I think I've always thought that she's necessary to show us, as you both reflected, how if you don't have a strong set of values and you don't have the, you know, integrity and particularly independence, you are prey for the Ellsworth Tooheys out there. And you know, Katie is you know, a wonderful illustration of that darkness
so
that goes on. Yeah,
a vibrant, you know, healthy sense of life is a really good start, but it's not enough.
it's not enough. Exactly, it's not enough.
There's evil in the world, and we need to be able and willing to protect ourselves from it. And Ayn Rand, again, in so many ways, showing us we need philosophy. You know, it could be philosophy at a teenage level, you know, for a high school kid, but we need philosophy.
Yeah, because on that high school level,
Yes.
we want her to climb out the bedroom window and stick her fingers up at her uncle Ellsworth, but she's not, you know, she hasn't got that spirit, and
Yeah, she can't do it.
Yeah,
she can't do it unless Peter Keating is holding the ladder.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah,
You know,
and it's tragic. Well, I think you know, loved this discussion, or listening to, particularly today, listening to the two of you. As I always say at the end of these, we could go on forever, or we could go on for a long time, such as the richness and depth of the characters and the writing. And I just, you know, really want to thank the two of you for joining us on this. It's always a great fun for me. I can tell you two enjoy it by the passion that you bring to it. So just want to honor and recognize that passion as well. So thank you very much.
Well, you know, if you can't love the Fountainhead, you better check your pulse. You know, I mean, it's such a great story. So, but I want to, you know, thank everybody, you know, for this, Shoshana and Josh and Razi for setting this up. This is fun. So thank you.
okay. And since I'll just mention something I actually did not notice until I was writing down the names of the characters here, that the name Katie, which is what we know her by, it's all there in Keating, right? All the letters of Katie are there in Keating. And so it's as if that was the best she could do in terms of thinking of her future, as I'm going to be connected with him. And it was a true love. It
Yes.
just, when that fell apart, and what she's got is Toohey saying, well, you know, who cares about you? Who cares about one little person? And then she starts thinking of herself as a little person, and she stops being a person at all, which of course is the opposite of Rourke, because Rourke can lose everything and he's still got all of him. Yeah. So thanks to Andy, thanks to Josh, thanks to Razi for setting it up.